This is the second part of our incorporation of sources into essays, part 2. Let's continue on. I suggested one way that you could incorporate this information that I borrowed from the source. Here are 2 other ways. In a brief examination of predictors of e-learning success for novice and expert learners, there's my 2013, right? E. Stark, A. Lassiter, and A. Quemper explained that although, etc., etc. So in this one, I've just mentioned the name of the article first rather than mentioning the authors. Another way, in a recent article in the journal Knowledge Management and E-Learning, it was explained that although the argument exists, etc., etc., etc. In this example, and in this sample both, I mentioned the authors' names in the text of the citation. In this one, I did not. I did not mention the authors' names, just the name of the journal in which the article was published. In this instance, then, I'm going to have to add their publication information, Stark, Lassiter, and Quemper, 2013, page 270, all in the parenthetical citation. That's what we call this, parenthetical citation. It's in parentheses. So that is 3 different ways that I could introduce my material. All right. This is how I would introduce my authors the first time that I use the source. In subsequent uses of the source, I can do some different things, particularly if I'm still in the same paragraph or I haven't used another source in between. So for example, I might be using 2 different sources in a paper. If I talk about source A in paragraph 1 and source A in paragraph 2, I don't necessarily have to reintroduce my authors. But if in paragraph 3, I continue on with my source A and then introduce source B and then go back to source A, it needs to be clear to my reader that I'm switching back and forth between sources. Okay? The other reason we want to introduce our sources is to be very clear where the source material ideas end and your ideas as a writer begin. This cannot be accomplished if you only put your citation in the end here, like this example. All right. It's not as easy to tell where ideas begin and end if you only put it in the citations. So my expectation, and the expectation of most of my colleagues at least, is that you introduce your sources as frequently as you can to make it clear where your ideas begin and end and the source ideas begin and end. Okay, so in this one, E. Stark, A. Lassiter, and A. Quemper, all professors at University State University, explain that, etc., etc., 270. All right. It's continuing on. One item of research they have found is that student participation increases in online classes. This item came from 271. So I'm still using the same source, Stark, Lassiter, and Quemper. I've moved from page 270 to page 271. Probably because students have a degree of anonymity in an online environment. That's my idea. So that is why I put the citation for the page number, page 270, right here in the middle of the sentence. Because this information, one item of research they have found is that student participation increases in online classes. That came from the article. But the rest of the sentence is mine. So I stop where the source information ends and where my own idea begins, my own comment begins. It would not be appropriate to put page 271 at the end because the second half of the sentence did not come from 271. That came from me as an author. Does that make sense? You want to be very clear where your source material ends and your own ideas begin. All right. So far I've worked with just one source. The third video in this series will explain what do I do if I add a second source and what the instructions are for this assignment for week 9.